Καλησπέρα και καλώς ήρθατε σε άλλη μια λέξη εκφραστικής ανάγνωσης εν μέσω κορονοϊού 2020. Σήμερα θα επιστρέψω μετά από πολύ καιρό στο έπος του Torquato Tasso, Λ.Ε.Α. Είχαμε διαβάσει την πρώτη οδή στην αρχή της λέσχης, εάν θυμάστε. Και σήμερα θα συνεχίσουμε με την 12η οδή, που είναι ίσως η πιο αγαπημένη μου. Ένα κομμάτι ευθυνής έχει αποκτήσει ξεχωριστή ζωή έξω από το έπος, σαν μαδριγάλι του Claudio Monteverdi, είναι το περίφημο Combattimento di Tancredi e Clorinda, εξαιρετικό κομμάτι μουσικής. Συστήνω, αν θέλετε, να το βρείτε στο YouTube, υπάρχουν διάφορες εκδοχές και είναι πραγματικά ένα κομμάτι μουσικής το οποίο αξίζει τον κόπο να το έχει ακούσει κανείς. Αλλά εδώ σήμερα θα διαβάσουμε σε μετάφραση ολόκληρη την 12η οδή, που, ξαναλέω, περιλαμβάνει από ένα σημείο και μετά και το περίφημο Combattimento. Torquato Tasso, The Liberation of Jerusalem, Canto 12. Now night has come, yet no repose in sleep the wearied people seek, wherever they be. On this side, vigilant stand the Franks and keep guard as the carpenters toil busily. On that, the pagans prop up walls or heap new stones against the tottering masonry and seek their crumbling ramparts to repair, and on both sides the wounded call for care. At last their wounds were dressed, and soon at least some of the night's tasks done or put aside, or slowed, while stillness and deep shade increased, and sleep's strong summons made men heavy-eyed. But the bold warrior maiden's soul is seized by a thirst for honour all unsatisfied. While others rest, she longs to act. Thus she, on watch with Argent, ponders inwardly. Indeed, good Argent and the Turkish king have done unheard-of deeds and strange today, charging alone such countless throngs, to bring harm to the Christian engines and get away. And I, sheltered on high, a splendid thing to boast of, from a distance joined the fray, an archeress, with, I grant, the luck to score. But is this all a woman may do? No more? Better for me on crags or in a wood at beasts my darts and bolts to shower, than here to seem, where virile hardihood shines forth, a mere girl amid men of power. Why not resume a woman's gown and snood, if that is all I'm worth, and keep some bower? Thus saying to herself, she broods and yearns for noble things, and to the warrior turns. For some time now, my lord, in a restless fit, and dreams of feats unheard of, my desire has fretted. Be it God inspires it, or men make gods of where their wills aspire. Outside the foe's stockade, do you see lit these torches? I'll go forth with sword and fire, and set their tower ablaze. This, I declare, is my firm will. Let the rest be heaven's care. But should it pass that my ill fortune prove to block the path of the return I plan, for him who is like a father in my love, and my dear serving maids, do what you can. Give means back home to Egypt to remove those friendless ladies and that tired old man. Do it for God's sake, sir. You know that true compassion to their sex and age is due. Argand is thunderstruck, and feels his heart by agonizing goads of glory spurred. Will you go hence? He cried. Will you depart and leave me here among the common herd? Can I, from some safe spot, without a smart, behold the smoke and sparks that you have stirred? No, no. Comrades in arms we've been, and I must share your glory too, or with you die. Mine too a heart that scorns death. I too know that life's a price well paid where honour lures. Eternal proof of this, said she, you show in that so generous sallying out of yours. However, if I, who am a woman, go to death, small harm our threatened town endures. But, heaven prevent the omen, if you fall, who will be left who can keep safe the wall? The knight replied, in vain you broach such long, specious objections to my settled will. I'll follow you, if you'll take me along, but I'll go first if you refuse me still. Agreed, they sought the king, sitting among the peers and sages of his commonweal. Clorinda thus commenced, my liege, attend and favour with your grace what we intend. Argent here, and his boast will not be vain, has vouched to set that high siege tower on fire. I shall be with him, and we only refrain till sleep's charms make the enemy nod or tire. The king lifts up his palms, while great tears stain with dew the white cheeks of the royal sire, and praised be thou, he cries, who turn'st thine eyes upon thy servant and bidst my kingdom rise. Nor will it quickly fall, while such as they who stand before me their brave standards raise. How can I, honoured pair, fitly repay your high deserts, whether in gifts or praise? Let fame praise you with her immortal lay, the glorious song will all the world amaze. The deed itself is your reward, but for your pain a not small portion of my realm you'll gain. So speaks the white-haired king, and warmly presses now her, now him against his grateful breast. But the nearby sultan by his mien confesses that generous envy gives his soul no rest. He cries, are your swords ready? Mine no less is. I too will go, or come behind at least. What, said Clorinda, shall we all give way to this one task? If you come, who will stay? So she replied, and Argent then alone with haughty front rose to dismiss the plan. But the king spoke first, and from the throne to Soliman with mild face thus begun. Verily you, magnanimous knight, have shown yourself to be yourself, ever a man whom no aspect of danger whatsoever could daunt or weary of warlike endeavour. I know a worthy outcome would betide were you to go, but I am not prepared you all should sally, and none stay inside of those who most excel and most have dared. Nor of this pair would I the risk abide, since their blood is most worthy to be spared, if their great task were a less useful one, or could by lesser men than these be done. But since such crowds of sentinels to guard the mighty tower are posted all about, so that attack, if by few, is barred, and ill-advised if many sally out, these two who now claim this great task and hard, who have often run like risks with never a doubt, let them go gladly, for indeed they are worth more than thousands by themselves, by far. You, as befits your royal honour more, stay with the rest, I pray you, near the gate, and after they have set the fire, for I trust they will, and flee the enemy's hate, if a hostile force pursues them to the door, to beat it back and save them lie in wait. So spoke the one king, and the other fell silent, though all within him was not well. Then Ismen added, may it please you two, before you sally out, to wait an hour while I concoct a charmed compound for you, whose clinging flame that engine will devour. Perhaps by then, too, some of the great crew that ring and guarded sleep may overpower. Agreed on this, to quarters all proceed, biding the proper time for the great deed. Clorinda doffs her silver-threaded cloak, her golden casque and a breastplate burnished bright, and dons a rusty armour, black as smoke, unlucky omen, plumeless, plain and light, thinking she thus will among hostile folk more move unperceived and safely through the night. Close by her side her eunuch Arseth stands, her Mentos and she lay in swaddling bands, who in her tracks had moved his withered thews throughout the world, and who attends her still. He sees her change of armour, and construes the insane dangers courted by her will, and grieves and pleads with her as someone whose locks in her service have grown white, to feel pity and for dear love's sake to abort the mission. But Clorinda cuts him short. At last he said, since then your stubborn mind persists to court ill fortune, since you heed neither my tired old age, nor loving kind goodwill, nor prayers, nor tears, I will proceed to tell you something more, and you shall find things yet unknown about the life you lead. Afterwards hear my plea, or go your ways. And he continues as she lifts her gaze. There ruled of old in Ethiopia, and perhaps rules still, prosperous Senapo, who worshipped by the son of Mary's law, and all his dark-skinned subjects worship so. There I, a pagan slave, who oversaw a crowd of maids at woman's work, below his royal consort served with faithful duty. She too was dark-skinned, yes, but bright in beauty. Her husband burns for her, and with love's fire matches the ice of monstrous jealousy. Little by little it grows, till his entire bosom so writhes with that crazed passion, he shuts her away where no man's gaze can spy her, and heaven's countless eyes can scarcely see. She, wise and meek in her dear lord's intent, and pleasure finds her peace and her content. Figures, from holy legend drawn, appear painted and haloed on her chamber walls. A lovely maid with blushing cheeks stands here, chained near a dragon who the sight appalls. A knight pierces the monster with his spear. Dead in its blood the beastly carcass sprawls. She kneels before that image every day, to own her secret sins and weep and pray. Grown pregnant meanwhile, she brings forth a white girl-child at 9 months' end, and you or she. Your unexpected hue fills her with fright. She wonders as at some monstrosity, but knowing the king's rages, from his side she hides the birth, for surely he would in the whiteness of your skin have seen cause to suspect her virtue was not clean. Therefore, a black-skinned girl-child born just then she plans to show her husband in your stead. And since her tower prison held no men, only her maids and me, as I have said, to me, her slave who dearly loved her, then she gave you, still unbaptized, to be bred. Nor could she there have baptized you, because custom forbade it, and the regent's laws. Weeping she gave you, with a charge that I should take you to be raised up far away. Who can describe her woe, her wild outcry, her oft-repeated last embraces, nay, her kisses drowned in tears, wails broken by sob after sob? At last she turned to pray, lifting her eyes. God, thou who knowest well all hidden deeds, and in my heart dost dwell, if this my heart be spotless, if intact these limbs remain, my marriage bed unmarred, not for myself I pray, in thought and act, else sinful, I am vile in thy regard. Save thou this babe, whose innocent mouth has lacked even mother's milk, from my own breast debarred. O, let her live, and chastely live, like me, but unlike mine, let all her fortunes be. And thou, O heavenly warrior, who didst free the virgin from the wicked dragon's hold, if ever I burned a votive light for thee, or at thy shrine placed incense of all bright gold, pray thou for her, that as thy true maid she may in all fortunes through thy aid be bold. She ceased, her whole heart failed her, her whole breath, and she seemed painted with the hues of death. Weeping I carried you then, hidden fast in a basket beneath flowers and leaves, and these so well deceived all eyes that I at last went unsuspected by the guards with ease. Unseen I issued out, and as I passed through a gloomy wood shaded by swaying trees, I saw approach a tigress of huge size, menace and fury burning in her eyes. I climbed into a tree and left you lying upon the grass, my heart convulsed with fear. Horrid beast then turned her proud head, eyeing your helpless form as she drew slowly near. Then her harsh gaze grew softer, as though trying to greet you with more placid, courteous cheer. She finds you, and you fondle without guile her visage, and she licks you as you smile, and to her beastly muzzle playfully you raise your tiny hand as her fierce gaze you meet. She moves her dugs toward you, and in the ways of wet nurses lies down. You take the teat, while I look on, my senses in a maze, chilled like a man whom uncouth wonders greet. Then, when the beast deems you have sucked enough, back into the dark thicket she runs off. I soon climb down, gather you up, and, bound along my earlier path, set out again. Lodging at last near a small town, I found a nurse who reared you in a hidden den. I stayed there till the sun had wheeled around to bring 10 months and 6 to mortal men. You with milk-tongue and were babbling words already, and venturing first steps, wavering and unsteady. But having come where ripening years begin to mark the quick descent to old age, I, rich with the ample gold the bounteous queen gave with the queen's largesse that I could buy, after that errand, pilgrim life grew keen to see my native land before I die, in the dear homestead with old friends to dwell, and winter's frost at my own hearth to quell. Toward Egypt thus with you I took the road, to seek the place of my nativity. Soon, at a torrent's banks, I find its flood blocks my advance, while bandits follow me. What should I do? You, my sweet, precious load, I cannot leave there, yet I needs must flee. I leap to swim, and with my one hand ply the swift waves, while the other holds you high. With furious speed the eddies rush and turn, at the midstream doubling on the current's flow, and at the deepest point where most they churn, they whirl me round and pull me down below. I let you go, but you are buoyed and borne by the waves, while a fair wind begins to blow and lands you safely on the soft sands, where I join you, drenched, exhausted, gasping air. With joy I lift you up. Later that night, when a deep silence covered all the land, I dreamt I saw a threatening warrior knight. Toward my face he points his naked brand, and says in a voice of awe, "Here, mortal wight, perform now this girl's mother's first command. Baptize the babe, for heaven holds her dear, and to my care she is entrusted here. I guard her, I defend her, to the stream I lent a name, and to the beasts' good will. Ah, woe betide you if you scorn this stream, for it is sent by heaven." Here he grew still. I woke and rose, and at the dawn's first gleam came from that place. Since then, for good or ill, deeming my own creed true, the vision false, I ignored the baptism for which it calls, and which your mother prayed for. You were reared a pagan, and I hid the truth from you. You grew valiant in arms and greatly feared, subduing your weak sex, ye nature too. Both fame and lands you earned, but since appeared you know yourself, and no less know how through both thick and thin I've served you evermore, your squire and father among men of war. Then, yesterday at first dawn, while the power of stillness numbed me like a deadly weight, that dream returned, but now with a dreadful glower. His face was dark, and his voice rang out. "Ingrate and wretch," he cried, "lo, the predestined hour nears when Clorinda must change life and fate. Mine she shall be, despite you, yours the pain." And speaking thus, he vanished once again. Hear then how heaven threatens you, my sweet, with strange vicissitudes. Perhaps, who knows, it is repugnant to it if we treat lightly the faith of parents, or oppose. Perhaps it is a true faith. I repeat, let go these arms, this wild feat you propose. Weeping he stops. She, pensive, gives a start, for similar dreams have visited her heart. At last she says, smoothing her troubled brow, "That faith I'll heed that now seems true to me, that you fed me with nurse's milk, though now you seek to make me doubt. However it be, I will not, nor will knighthood's law allow fear to disarm me, or to make me flee, not even if death in the most dreadful guise that mortals shrink from looked me in the eye." She calms him thus, but now the hour is near when she must put her boast into effect. She leaves him, and rejoins her warlike peer, who with her braves the huge risks they expect. Ismen comes up to them full of warm cheer, striving their perfect virtue to perfect. 2 balls of sulphur and pitch he gives the two, and a hollow pot with torches hid from view. They slip into the night, and down the hill they run abreast with long and rapid strides, furtive and shrouded by the darkness, till they near the place where the foe's engine hides. Their souls flame out, hearts boil. They scarce can still the tumult of the pulse that shakes their sides. Blood, fire, is their fierce hatred's sole command. The guard calls for the password and cries, "Stand!" Wordless they pass, and now the sentries yell, "To arms! To arms!" Re-echoes, and they know concealment is no longer possible. The dauntless pair's reaction is not slow. As cannon or as lightning in one fell instant, with flash and thunder, even so for them to charge, to meet, to pierce the packed ranks, and to smash them seems a single act. Such power they wield, 1,000 men fall dead, 1,000 weapons break. The plan succeeds. Out came the hidden torches. Quick sparks sped through glimmering tinder from the smouldering leads, and flames seized on the timbered frame and spread. Who can describe how slithering fire feeds fire on every side? How thick smoke mars with clouds the face of night and the pure stars? See balls of flame ascend the sky, their course obscured by wheeling smoke and mingled haze. The wind blows, fans the fire, lends it force, massing the swarms of sparks in one huge blaze. The terrified Franks, while that inferno roars, rearm in haste, and look on in a daze as, crashing down their once so fearsome tower, annuls long hours of toil in one brief hour. 2 squads of Christians where the fire burns have rushed up in a hurry. Argent cries, "I'll douse that fire with your blood," and turns to face their ranks with menace in his eyes, but, staying by Clorinda, soon discerns that step by step they're forced back up the rise. Like a stream by long rain swollen, swelling still, the crowd comes on and pushes them uphill. The golden gate is open, where the king waits, ringed by an armed concourse of his men, to take the warrior pair beneath his wing, should their good fortune lead them back again. Swiftly the two toward the threshold spring, the Frankish mob right at their backs, but then a charge by Solomon beats back that rout, and the gate shuts, but Clorinda is shut out. Shut out she was alone, since, even as the gate was being closed, she moved away, afire with cruel rage to make a pass at Arimon, some vile blow to repay. She did repay him, and fierce Argent was oblivious of her unforeseen delay, for the struggle, press, and darkness of the skies deprived his heart of heed, of sight his eyes. But having cooled her wrathful spirit in her adversary's blood, with sudden dread she sees the gate close and the foe begin to press around, and seems as good as dead. Yet by ruse she plans to save her skin, since no one notes her as they plunge ahead. Posing as one of them, she slips among the common sort, unnoticed in the throng. Then, like a silent wolf who seeks his lair after some deed of blood and slinks aside, she, favoured by the tumult and dark air, contrives a way to leave them unespied. Only from Tancred, who had earlier sped up beside the gate, she cannot hide. Arrived just as she Arimon subdued, he saw it all, and marked her, and pursued. He wants to try her, thinking her a man worthily matched with him in martial skill. Now by another gate it is her plan to enter, and she winds steeply uphill. While he's following closely as he can, his weapons rattle in his haste, until she turns and cries, "You there, so out of breath, what do you bring?" He answers, "War and death." "War then, and death you'll have? I'll not refuse your wishes," she replies, and stands cold-eyed. Tancred, averse, since she is on foot, to use his horse, dismounts and drives the steed aside. They grasp their sharp blades, each the other views, whetting keen wrath and kindling warlike pride. And now not otherwise these two engaged than 2 great bulls who burn with jealous rage. Well worth the clearest sunshine would have been such marvellous deeds, well worth the highest stage. O knight, you who would keep that mighty scene forgotten in your womb's unfathomed cage, grant that I now draw forth and in serene daylight display it to a future age. Let their fame live, remembered in their story, your gloom will shine in their transcendent glory. No feints, no parries, no quick shifts of ground they deign to use. Here deftness plays no part. They give no feigned blows as they hack and pound. Darkness and rage forbid the use of art. Here their blades fall with a dread grinding sound upon the armoured plates that guard the heart. Their feet are fixed, their hands ever employed. No slash is vain, no thrust stabs in the void. Shame goads on hatred to revenge, and hate being sated, vengeance reawakens shame, so that their blows and haste, however great, spur ever greater force and deadlier aim. And at last, thus tangled in their fierce debate, they draw too close for sword strokes. All the same, they strike out with their pommels, crazed and rash, and butt with shields and make their helmets clash. 3 times the warrior has embraced the maid in his huge arms, and from that clinging grasp as many times she has burst free, dismayed to know no lovers, but a fierce foe's clasp. Then each of them, returning to the blade, dyes it in wounds, till, wearied and aghast, both she and he, pausing at last, retire from their relentless struggle to respire. Each looks at the other, leaning, blood bespread, heavily on the sword-hilts in their clutch. The last stars fade behind them. Up ahead the east already glows at dawn's first touch. Now Tancred sees his enemy has shed more blood than he, himself not hurt as much. He exults and glories. O mad mortal mind, puffed up at every gust of fortune's wind! Ah, wretched man, what makes you glad? Ah, bleak will be your triumph, sad your vaunts and jeers. Your eyes, if you survive, will waste your cheek for that blood's every drop with seas of tears. Thus, wary, these two stand and do not speak for a long time while the new day appears. At last, breaking the silence, Tancred thought to make her name the enemy he fought. And happy is the chance indeed that where silence conceals it such great prowess reigns. But since our ill luck must make us despair of praise or witness worthy of our pains, I pray, if one who fights may pray, declare your name, degree, your titles and domains, that, win or lose, it may be known to me who gives me honour in death or victory. Replies the fierce maid, Vainly you demand what never was my custom to make known. But whosoever I be, here you see stand one of that pair who burned the great tower down. Hearing this, Tancred flamed with anger and replied, You rue those words, that deed you own. Your silence and your foolish words alike urge vengeance, you uncivil boor, to strike. Their rage returns and hurls them, though much bled and weakened, back to combat. Savage fight. Their skill is banned where strength lies all but dead, but in their place mad frenzy rules outright. Ah, what huge gates, wide open and blood-red, their swords make gape, wherever they alight, in armour or in flesh, and only hate arrests life that would else flee through them from their breasts. Even as the Aegean sea, when Aquilo in notice ceased to blow and churn and pound, does not fall still, but in the heave and throw of waves retains the motion and the sound, so, though that strength which once impelled each blow ebbs with their loss of blood, they found in their first impetus sufficient force to add wound upon wound without remorse. But now, behold, the fatal hour arrives that at its end Clorinda's life will owe. His sword's point he at her white bosom drives, greedy to drink her blood it plunges. Lo, the tender gold-lace coverings it rives that clasp her lovely breasts, and a hot flow spreads on her shift. She knows she's dying, and, feeling her feet grow weak, can scarcely stand. He follows up his victory, intent to quite bear down the transfixed maid, and she, even as she fell in accents faint and spent, was forming her last words, her dying plea, words by a new soul to her spirit lent, new soul of faith, of hope, of charity, grace poured by God, who at her final breath grants, after a rebel's life, a handmaid's death. Friend, you have won. I pardon you. Do you pardon me also? Not my body, no, it fears naught, but my soul, yes. Make it new. Pray for it, and baptize me ere I go. These tremulous soft accents sink into his heart, and there, he knows not how, make grow a strange new sense that calms all rage. He hears and feels his eyes well up with sudden tears. Not far, a little rill was murmuring from its cool source, hid by the mountain's height. He ran there, filled his helmet at the spring, and came back sadly for the solemn rite. Raising her visor with his hands trembling, he bared the unknown brow unto the light. He saw it, knew it, horror in his eyes. Ah, woe, to see, to know, to recognize. He did not die outright, but set guard so strong on his heart, his woe was forced beneath. Numb to his grief, he hastened to make flow life-giving water where his steel gave death. He spoke their holy text. She smiled. A glow of bliss transformed her face, while her last breath seemed to proclaim, at life's joyful release, "The heavens open, I depart in peace." A lovely pallor overspreads her face, like violets mixed with lilies. On the sky she fixes her fair gaze, and from that place the sun seems to gaze back with pitying eye. She does not speak, but, as if to embrace the night, she lifts her naked, cold hand high, giving the pledge of peace, and in this wise, resting as if in sleep, the fair maid dies. When he knows her gentle soul has fled, ah, vain is all his gathered strength. It will not hold, and he to pent-up sorrow yields the rein of all himself. It bursts the narrow fold of his heart, crazed, uncontrollable, while pain floods all his senses and his face grows cold. Down like a corpse the living man is hurled, colourless, bloodless, mute, dead to the world. Indeed, his life, disdainful of control, would, breaking its frail cage, that very day in chase of the bright, liberated soul that spread its wings before, have flown away. But here by chance arrives a French patrol, in search of water or some such thing, and they take up the maid and the knight by her side, he scarce alive, and dead for her who died. Their leader from afar has seen displayed the Christian prince's arms, and knows him well. He hurries up, and finds the lovely maid, and sorrowfully wonders how she fell. Unwilling that her fair limbs should be preyed upon by wolves, though she be infidel, he made the rest lift both of them, and went with them along the way to Tancred's tent. Not yet, while thither gently they progress, the wounded knight awakes, but in his throes groans feebly, and his heaving sides confess his life's race but has not yet attained its close. But the other body, silent, motionless, the spirit's absence all too clearly shows. Thus carried side by side they are conveyed, but finally in separate chambers laid. There, ministering unto the prostrate knight, his squires gather round in pitying bands, and slowly to his languid eyes the light returns, and he can sense their healing hands and voices, though his dazed mind cannot quite grasp what they are, and scarcely understands. He glares at the place, at them, but in due course knows them, and speaks in accents weak and hoarse. Am I alive? Do I still breathe? Still see your hateful beams of light, accursed day? Day that in witness of night's infamy rebukes my guilt with your accusing ray? Ah, coward hand, why dare not use on me, you expert in all means that wound and slay, you heinous minister of death, the knife and cut the threads of this felonious life. Pierce this breast also, and fierce havoc wreak with your remorseless steel upon my heart. Yet you perhaps, since crime seems all you seek, will deem it mercy thus to end my smart. Then must I live, a miserable freak, a monstrous wretch of love-destroying art, a monstrous wretch for whose colossal blame one doom alone fits, a base life of shame. Alive amid my torments and my cares, my justly vengeful furies, crazed, astray, trembling, I'll haunt the gloomy desert lairs, where memories of my first crime crowd my way. With horror marked, ashamed that sunlight bears its wretchedness, my face will shun the day. I will fear myself, and from myself will fly forever, and ever find myself nearby. But where, alas, abandoned far or near, now lies her body, once so fair and chaste? For what my madness has not marred, I fear the rage of some wild animal lays waste. Ah, prey too noble, ah, too sweet, too dear, and far too precious feast for earthly taste. Ah, hapless limbs, must dark woods against you enrage first me, and then the wild beasts too? Yet I shall go, beloved spoils, and twine my arms about your form, if it endures. But at your lovely body and divine have fed the appetites of woos and curs. Let those same muzzles glut themselves on mine, and the same belly bolt my flesh as yours. Blessed is that tomb, a bed of joy for me, in which I lie with you, wherever it be. So spoke the wretched man. Then he was told that the corpse he grieved for had been carried there, and over his gloomy face a brightness rolled, like lightning flickering in cloudy air. Out of his bed's repose he heaves the cold, reluctant weight his limbs can scarcely bear, and hauling with great pain his weary thighs, he turns with faltering steps to where she lies. But when he came and saw that lovely breast, pierced by a ghastly wound his own hand made, saw, like a serene starless night at rest, with all its splendour lost, that face displayed, he all but fell down, trembling and distressed, had not a faithful nearby hand lent aid. "O face," he cried, "wherein death can create sweets that can never sweeten my harsh fate! O boteous hand, that proffered unto me the tender pledge of friendship and of peace, how do I find you now, and in what misery? And you, O tender limbs, who here bid cease all vengeful rage and beastly villainy, yet of my beastly rage are vestiges? O eyes of mine, O ruthless as my hand, for what it stabbed you stare at where I stand. Do you stay dry and see this? Flow then, flow my blood when tears refuse to flow." And there abruptly he breaks off, reeling below his desperate wish for death, and starts to tear madly at bandages and wounds, till lo, blood streams from the galled gashes he lays bare. He would have killed himself, but bitter pain making him swoon brings him to life again. Back on his couch, his fugitive soul and proud is once more to its hateful duties bound. But meanwhile garrulous rumour's lips are allowed his bitter woe and hapless fate resound. Compassionate Godfrey comes, and a great crowd of faithful dearest friends run gathering round. But neither stern admonishments nor kind prayers can mollify his obdurate mind. As in a sore wound's tenderest spot a touch exasperates the torment's maddening thrill, so their kind comforts for his torments clutch at his sick heart and make it bitterer still. But Reverend Peter, loving him as much as a good shepherd loves a lamb fallen ill, in words exceeding grave speaks to upbraid his obstinate rage and promise heavenly aid. "O Tancred, Tancred, too far off the mark of your true self and your first aim you stray. Who deafens thus your ears? What sudden dark so blinds your eyes you cannot see the day? This trial of yours is heaven's envoy. Hark! Do you not hear, not see him point the way? How he rebukes you, leads you back upon that first road you have lost, and cheers you on? To the deeds of your first duty, to the path worthy a knight of Christ he calls you back, that you have left to your exceeding scathe, trudged to a godless girl, sad change, alack! With fortunate misfortune, kindly wrath, heaven's light lash now punishes your black and foolish sin, and makes of your soul's weal yourself the minister. And do you take it ill? Do you, ignorant man, refuse the life heaven makes a gift of here, and take offence? Whither, O wretch, abandoned to the strife of hasty agonies and unbridled sense? You hang above the eternal precipice, the knife is poised to cut you down. See, it descends. See it, I beg you. Recollect yourself, take hold of a grief that lures you toward a death twofold. He is silent, and the fear of soul's death makes Tancred his wish for body's death restrain. His heart finds comfort in those words, and takes hold of the fierce force of his inward pain. Though now and then, while all his body shakes, he moves his tongue to cry out or complain, babbling now to himself, now to that saint in heaven who, he dreams, hears his complaint. To her from sunset to sunrise his moan he lifts in prayers tirelessly renewed, like a nightingale when some rude peasant's stone kills in their nest her still unfeathered brood, who sings all night afflicted and lone, and fills with wails the forest solitude. At dawn at last he shuts his weary eyes, and through his tears sleep's vapours wreathe and rise. Lo, in a starry vestment, while he dreams, his mournful friend rises before his gaze. Fairer by far, though the celestial beams adorn, not hide her old shape with their blaze. Looking on him with tender ruth, she seems to bid him dry his streaming eyes, and says, "See, I am happy now, I am at peace, my faithful lover, let your sorrow cease. What now I am, I owe to you. You by your error took me from mortality. You by your pity wafted me on high into God's lap and blessed eternity. Here I, adoring him, rejoice. Here I trust that a place waits where you too shall see, in everlasting day, the great sun shine, and gaze upon that loveliness and mine. If you do not grudge your soul its heavenly weal, nor are beguiled by vanities of sense, live. Know I love you, this I won't conceal, as much as a soul may love without offence." So said she, and her great eyes blazed with zeal beyond all mortal wont, right and intense. Then she into her depth of phrase withdrew, and vanished, filling him with comforts new. Consoled, he wakes, and to the prudent care submits himself of the physician band, and meanwhile orders burial for the fair limbs that once held her noble spirit. And although her tomb is not of rich and rare marble, nor sculpted by daedal hand, yet is the stone, and the craftsman who endows it with a form, as choice as time allows. Thither, with torches lit along the line, he ordered her with noble pomp conveyed, her armour hanging from a naked pine, in sign of trophy he had high displayed. But when his wounds the knight no more confined to his couch, and his healed limbs his will obeyed, next dawn he seeks her grave with pious moans, to pay due honour to her buried bones. Arriving at the tomb that heaven ordained for a prison where his living soul must die, he paused, pale, cold, and mute, and long remained stock still, and on the marble fixed his eye. At last, amid a rush of tears, a pained "Amy" burst from him, and this desolate cry: "O stone, so loved, so honoured, that you make my flame in you, my tears all round you wake, you hold not death, but living ash, where bliss, ye love, itself lies buried, but not dead. That same torch feeds you that, though now it is less sweet, if no less hot, my heart has fed. Ah, take these sighs, these kisses, and take this sorrowful moisture by my eyes here shed. Do you, since I cannot, these offerings give to those dear spoils that in your bosom live. Take them. If that fair soul should ever cast eyes on her lovely corpse beneath your stone, your pity and my daring shall look past, for hate and spite up yonder are unknown. She will forgive my sin, and she at last will breathe hope in the heart here left alone. She knows only my hand sinned, nor will sigh if I, who loving lived, should loving die. Die loving her I shall, O happy day, whenever it may come, day still more blessed, if, even as now, I near your precincts stray, I then be gathered with her in your breast. Let our two loving souls in God's light play, and in one tomb let both her ashes rest. Let death have what life lost or found too late, if I may hope for this, glorious fate. But in the meantime muddled whispers spread through the pent city the appalling news. Confirmed in public groan, from head to head the rumour runs and grievous anguish strews, while women's wails ring out in cries of dread, as if all lay in ruins and turned loose. Fire and cruel foes flew through the town, and bore its houses and its temples down. But Arseth, all eyes turned on him, appears, groaning with misery, aghast, alone. And like the rest he cannot vent in tears his grief. Pain turns his very heart to stone. He tears his white locks, and with filth besmears his head, and beats his bosom to the bone. But where he stands, surrounded by the crowd, Argent comes in their midst, and cries aloud, "Truly I wished, when first I learned that she, our champion, had remained outside the wall, to run and follow her immediately, and share her fate wherever it might call. What did I not do? What not say? What plea to the king omit to let the drawbridge fall? He, while in vain I pleaded and demurred, restrained me with his sovereign royal word. Had I gone there neither by surprise the way back with the maid would I have gained, or spilled on ground her crimson blood now dies, in a brave death what life in me remained. But what more could I do? All otherwise have the decrees of men and gods ordained. The maid has died her fated death, and I know what behoves me now. The Frank must die. Hear, O Jerusalem, hear Argent's vow, hear it, O heaven, and if I fail of this, with lightning strike my head. Hear me, I now swear to wreak vengeance on the Frank. He is her murderer, and her death will teach me how. This blade I now draw will not be at peace until in Tancred's heart I sink its blows, and leave his sinking carcass to the crows." So said he, and applause like thunder rolled at his last words, and the imagined scope of his foretaste of their revenge controlled the grief and gall that made his spirit droop. O vanity of oaths! Far else, behold, was the event. Contrary to his hope, he'll fall in equal fight, who now in vain deems that man doomed by whom he shall be slain.